Welcome, everyone, to the San Francisco group of the Sierra Club Candidate Introduction Meeting. We are the Group Nominating and Elections Committee, Kim Sri Malthus, Sue Vaughn, and myself, Kathy Howard. This evening, we were talking with the candidates who are running for the San Francisco Group Executive Committee. We have 7 candidates for 5 positions. So we will be moving along quickly with questions and sticking to the stated timeframes. Sue will be our timekeeper, and she is going to be very firm. We are recording this, viewed online for club members who cannot make the meeting. Kim Sri will start, and she will read the questions and call on each candidate to respond to the question. So you will all answer one question, and then we'll go on to the next one. And I'm just going to turn this over to Kim Sri.
Evening, everybody. I'm going to read the question and then call on the candidate, and I'll tell you to unmute, and that you have 1 minute, or unmute and you have 2 minutes. Let's begin with our first question. Protecting the environment in this time of climate change is a challenging task. Please let us know what skills you bring and what background you bring to the executive committee to help with this work. These can be related to past environmental work or other issues or projects you've worked on. Howard Wong, please unmute yourself and you have 1 minute.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me come to this meeting. I think I'll just say summarize first. I think I have 3 particularly special areas of skills. One, of course, is architecture, which is my profession. Second is transportation, because that's been a special interest of mine professionally and as a advocate for most of my life, and as a lifelong Muni writer. And social equity, not only because of my ethnicity, but because of my activism politically and in the Chinese American community. As an architect, I've been looking at projects and reviewing projects for almost 30 years. I've been a neighborhood activist in terms of looking at projects. I've been a advocate as a member.
Thank you, Howard.
I've been
Howard, thank you.
Yes, that's it.
That's time.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
just not enough time. I know.
Yeah,
That's plenty of time. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Sue, if-
Okay.
Strasser, please unmute yourself. You have 1 minute.
Sue, maybe you could hold up something at 10 seconds and
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for doing this. Like, I have a lot of transit advocacy experience, and I see transit as one of the major things we can do for climate change. There's so many things that have to be done. They have to be done at the state level and the federal level. But right here in San Francisco, transit is the one thing we can work out. And every time we improve transit and find the money to make transit better, we get cars, we have few less cars, and they're burning less gasoline. And that helps a little bit. And as a past engineer, I can help the rest of the committee when they deal with all the other things that they have to deal with. So I feel I'm very qualified to do this job.
Thank you, Howard. John Rizzo, is John in the meeting?
I don't see John yet now.
All right, thank you. We'll go with Olga. Is Olga in the meeting?
I do not see her. I do not see her in the waiting room.
All right, thank you. Joshua,
I'm here. Should I just go ahead?
please, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. So I've been an attorney for over 20 years, so I look a lot to law and policy for guidance, and I see these as tools to change. I'm also a certified access specialist and consult on disability access. And finally, I advocate for trees and urban canopy. And so what all of this means is that I have the training to understand the intersectionality of many issues at once. I understand that when I'm fighting for trees to protect them, to plant them, or to change the laws regarding them, that I'm also fighting for racial equity and green spaces, disability access to urban forests, sustainable ecosystems, and the right of all living beings to have a climate resilient future. Climate change requires advocates who can innovate to solve many problems and issues at once. And that's the kind of intersectional thinking that I bring to the table.
Thank you. Barry Clemenson, you have 1 minute. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, you just muted me. Was I making too much noise?
Please begin.
Anyway, I have a background in business. I owned and operated a small business for 25 years. Have employed a whole bunch of people during that time. And I've been very involved in progressive politics for about 25 years in San Francisco. And the relationships that have been built up, I believe, are an asset to bring to the club, and how we work together and how we begin to approach other folks. I've been trying to, this past 3 years, I converted my home to be all electric. And now I'm going to try to actually talk to people about how we can move forward as a city to do this.
Thank you. Hunter Cutting, please unmute yourself. You have 1 minute.
Hi, everybody, and good evening. I guess I would start off by saying I've been a volunteer for the San Francisco Sierra Club for the last 6 years. I'd also share that I have a deep technical background with a Bachelor's of Science in Conservation and Resource Studies from UC Berkeley. For my day job, I regularly contribute to the drafting of climate science reports, and I currently serve as an invited expert reviewer for the IPCC. And for the past 17 years, I've worked as a professional advocate fighting to stop climate change. However, as we all know, most of these environmental issues are essentially political problems, and I bring 4 decades of political experience. I served as a legislative aide in U.S. House of Representatives, and I've run election campaigns across the country, including here in San Francisco. Along the way, I spent many years fighting racial injustice and police misconduct, helping to found We Interrupt This Message, a media resource center for social justice. And most recently, I served as the volunteer leader for the Save Clipper Cove campaign here in San Francisco, which stopped developers from taking over the biggest, most beautiful cove in the city for a mega marina dedicated to luxury yachts. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Which is 2 minutes.
Thank you. Addressing environmental issues today is a daunting task due to the large number of issues and the choices in facing them. What environmental issues in San Francisco are important to you? And what are your suggestions for addressing them? For this question, you have 2 minutes.
Who's the first person, Kim Tree?
I'm going to say that right now. Thank you, Sue. Barry, please unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. As I mentioned previously, I've just finished converting my home to all electric. And I wrote an article about it in the Bayview newspaper in, I believe it was the August issue. And the whole project was a total upgrade to my solar, all new appliances, everything. It came in just under $50,000. Gordon Marr, Supervisor Marr, had requested a study of the city to ask what would be the cost of electrifying all of our homes. And it came up with a price of between $14,000 and $34,000. And that's exclusive of actually adding solar to the roofs. And my solar panels were around $20,000. And so last March, there was an article in the San Jose Mercury that indicated that if people who purchase natural gas and electricity from PG&E, they're seeing their average bill go up to $196 a month. Some of us, of course, pay less and some more. If we look at the city trying to provide a very low-cost loan to individuals. This can be done. A $50,000 loan at 2% interest over 30 years is $184 per month, less than what we're paying to PG&E. And we could see a dramatic change in our neighborhoods if such a policy was adopted. So,
Thank you. Howard Strassner, please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes.
I started to work to support Muni even before I became active with the Sierra Club back in the 70s. I wrote a little short letter to then Supervisor Feinstein saying, we need a parking tax to induce people to drive less. In this city, there's no way you just go on, you can pour the money in Muni, you can keep doing stuff, and you have no way to get people out of their cars because we're too auto-centric, even though it's supposedly transit first. Well, supervisors, that vague little letter, Supervisor Feinstein knew how to implement it. She promised some goodies to the seniors, about 20% for seniors. Well, that has morphed into over $400 million a year going from car drivers to Muni riders. And you have to do, may not be able to ever do anything that large again. I mean, I'll go to my grave very happy having accomplished that. But you can do something similar in small ways. It has to be that it's a better deal to ride Muni. Muni can be almost as fast as cars. I get that when I go downtown. But I had to pick my neighborhood to make this happen. So for no one else, maybe it takes more than a few minutes more. But people have to see that and work with it. And the Sierra Club should come out strongly to support transit first. And that may mean not just something where you're not preserving highways, not preserving roadways, you're saving those for Muni. We should have come out and said, when Muni puts red paint on the sidewalk, to make that a little bit of transit first. That's a good thing to do. So we have a long way to go that way. And I want the Sierra Club to be more active in that regard. And I'm going to work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hunter, please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Hey, everyone. I guess I would call out 3 local issues that are important to me, in part because I think there are some of the most important challenges for the city as well. So number 1, we have to make San Francisco a livable city with great public transit and plenty of dense and affordable housing. And this is probably the most difficult challenge for the city. One area where the city can step up and should step up is requiring that housing on public land be 100% affordable. Some argue that that just means less affordable housing elsewhere because there's only a limited amount of affordable housing dollars. But the fact is we can and we have increased revenue affordable housing, but public land suitable for big housing projects is scarce and we're not going to get any more. The second issue I flag is that we have to reform the management of our water supply here in San Francisco. Currently, the city is in a surreal alliance with big agricultural interests in the Central Valley to the point where we are actually aligned with the policies of the Trump administration still. It's crazy. This is a straight up political problem with the office of the mayor, and we're going to have to apply legal pressure to get their attention. Finally, I think we need to push San Francisco to the forefront on climate change. On paper, the city looks good, mostly due to the history that we ended up with a lot of renewable energy, but we have to make an effort just like everybody else. We got to invest in mass transit and charging stations, and those are the obvious steps. But I do think that there's one place where we could be innovative. Much like we put a solar bond on the ballot that jump-started financing for solar power, I think we should put a bond on the ballot for energy storage to jumpstart that area of the sector. I'll stop there, and thanks.
Thank you. Josh, please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So you all know that I'm that tree guy, and that when it comes to intersectionality of canopy and equity, I try really hard to see the forest and the trees. I've done a ton of work with various communities and to make incremental policy and regulatory changes, some of which are coming to fruition at City Hall at this very moment. But what I'm most proud of is Mission Verde, a first of its kind partnership that enabled the planting of 3 times as many trees in the mission than the city originally envisioned, when it proposed to cut down every tree along 24th between Mission and Potrero Avenue. Using the city's own laws, policies, and resolutions, I helped the community to strategize and bring public works to the table. In addition to getting the city to agree to do things like allow a tree funeral, which was held last year on Dia de los Muertos, they agreed to cross braces with culturally significant colors, to allowing the tree wood to be used for art, and most importantly, the formation of Mission Verde, which is a group of volunteer tree waterers who took on watering to free up funds to plant 3 times as many trees. We've been at this for more than half a year now, and not only are we successfully taking care of nearly 150 trees, but we're strengthening community at the same time and showing the rest of the city how this can be achieved. So I believe in using regulatory, procedural, and policy tools to create partnership and mutual solutions for the greater good. If we're going to be a resilient city, we have to work together. It can't just be the city. It can't just be the community. It's got to be both.
Thank you, Josh. And maybe there's a speaker issue. I think somebody had noted it might be your speaker, but actually hear that actually in general with everyone, there's a bit of background noise. Sorry, so it may not be you, Josh. Howard Wong, please unmute yourself and you have 2 minutes.
All right. One of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gases are buildings and the design of buildings. My career has been particularly focused on historic preservation. I firmly believe that the greenest building is the one that already exists. Also, technology and design of buildings has been amazingly evolving. We have mass timber buildings and biomaterials that are going up as high as 8, 9, 10 stories. There are even high rises being designed out of mass timber technology. The concrete industry has been changing to different admixtures and methodology of production that may create carbon-free concrete. I think building codes and the way we build in the city is evolving, and I think it can rapidly change with different codes. The other area of interest of mine has been public transit and transportation. As a founding member of Save Muni, we've been advocating for 100% recovery of routes post-pandemic by augmenting weekend service, which prior to the pandemic was about 70% of weekday routes. However, Muni has stated they have 85% funding for restoring 85% of service. So 70% plus 15% additional funding means that we can have all the routes restored, as well as 15% more frequency on frequent routes or core lines. One of the other areas of interest for me has been social equity. The involvement I've had as an architect, as a neighborhood activist, as a transit advocate, has always stressed the importance of underserved communities. As an architect for the city of San Francisco,
Howard, you're past 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. And our final question for the evening. What is your position on the benefits and drawbacks of CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act? You will have 1 minute for this question. Hunter, please unmute yourself. You have 1 minute.
All right. Well, you saved the hardest question for the last. Look, CEQA is by far and away the most important legal tool and policy that we have in California for environmental protection. It is incredibly effective. And so as a result, it has been targeted. And quite frankly, a lot of the attacks on CEQA that we've seen today are just in bad faith. Could it be improved? Sure. Nothing is perfect, and that includes CEQA. But I think we're talking about making perfect the enemy of the good here. If we are going to have a process, I think it needs to be community driven, and it probably makes sense to do one to improve CEQA, just so that we can move the conversation on and point to the process for improving CEQA. Because quite frankly, CEQA isn't the problem. That's not what's stopping projects. It's not what's stopping affordable housing. there are other issues that are at bear there. So that's where I would think the community should go. Thanks.
Thank you. Josh, please unmute yourself. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So I'll preface this by saying I may be a lawyer, but I am no CEQA expert. And my basic understanding of CEQA is that it's intended to inform government decision makers and the public about the potential effects of projects and ideally prevent avoidable environmental impacts. With that said, here's my thinking. The benefits of CEQA are that it puts some sort of check in place on development that might otherwise run roughshod over the environment. It's an opportunity to pump the brakes before irreversible environmental harm is done. The drawbacks are that it's procedurally really obtuse and generally inaccessible to advocates without means. Also, it doesn't go far enough in what we now face with climate change and the need for resilient. And finally, it seems like there are a lot of loopholes that government entities avail themselves for exemptions, leaving enforcement up to community organizations and nonprofits, which seems to defeat the law's intention in the first place.
Thank you. Howard Stressner, please unmute yourself and you have 1 minute.
So CEQA, of course, has done a lot of good and it's more, but one way to improve it, if every CEQA study included the fact, what are the environmental impacts, for climate change impacts of this project? How many more people will drive? How much more stuff will be emitted, natural gas? How much more natural gas will be burned? And that's not what CEQA is made for, but it should be. And if it did that, it would be serving the most important problem we had. We would say, well, you have to change this project. We always ask for mitigations as part of CEQA or alternatives. And you would come up with changes. If you do this, this, and this, you will have a zero impact on climate change, and that will be a much better project. So I think that's one of the changes we should seek. Thank you.
Howard Wong,
Good night, guys.
please unmute yourself and you have 1 minute.
I think we lost him.
See,
I don't see Howard.
we lost, and did Howard Stressner tell us he was leaving early?
Yeah, he left early.
Okay.
I'd say good.
Let me interrupt briefly because we had fewer people than we expected. We have a little extra time, so.
Yeah, but hold on, Barry hasn't gone.
No, I just want don't want anybody else to leave. We have a little extra time, so we're going to get everybody another minute, a whole minute after the end of this question. Okay.
Howard Wong is in the waiting room.
Oh, I'll get him in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Howard, you're back.
I'm back. Sorry.
That's okay.
So
You're next.
am I next? Okay,
Yes.
we're in the CEQA question.
Correct. Thank you. You have 1 minute.
Okay, I think it's important to remember the origins of CEQA. At the time when dams and urban renewal and other big infrastructure projects disenfranchised a lot of people, particularly disadvantaged communities. So CEQA offered a remedy for projects that had little concern for the average people, for the environment, for urban areas. Urban renewal wiped out not only neighborhoods, but disadvantaged particular cultures and ethnicities. One of the things, I've been party to CEQA appeals, party to CEQA lawsuits. And over the years, I found that amazingly, projects have gotten better through the CEQA process. And project sponsors and developers have become much more attuned and accommodating and able to maneuver the CEQA.
Howard, it's past 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
Barry, please unmute yourself and you have 1 minute.
Great. Yeah, to me, I mean, CEQA allows, it actually means the environment has to be a consideration. And it's kind of mind-boggling to consider a time when that wasn't. But I've just reading in the East Bay Express, one of the serious flaws in CEQA's design, it says it undermines its efficacy. The reports that establish potential environmental impacts are written by private consultants hired by the developer. And how can that be? That seems like a clear conflict of interest. So those of you who know more about CEQA can tell me whether that's really true or not.
Thank you, Barry. So we have extra time, and we'd like to give each candidate 1 minute to offer any other informative information about yourselves that you'd like us to know. We'd like to start with Josh.
Oh no, I'm totally unprepared. I think it really just what I see happening a lot in in the space around climate justice and environmental justice and climate change and climate resilience is, from a governmental perspective, all these departments just staying in their lanes and refusing to talk to one another, to intersect with one another, and to see problems as nuances and intersectional. And I think that as an organization with so many people who bring so many different skill sets to the table here, we really have that opportunity to offer some solutions, some intersectional, innovative, outside the box solutions to these government entities, and and hopefully the people power to make it happen. And that's really how I'd like to contribute is all of the different things that make me who I am, that allow me to think of things that might not otherwise have been thought of yet, and to be willing to try things that might not otherwise have been tried because it's just not the way it's been done. But we need to be doing things differently because the way that we've been doing things isn't working.
Thank you. Hunter?
Well, actually, I would second everything Josh just said and actually pick up from there. I think the club has a real challenge in how we are going to try to integrate equity internally, right? How we're going to advocate for racial justice and social justice internally in the club and have that reflected internally. And I'm committed to trying to work with that. I spent many years in the racial justice and social justice communities, worked for many years on police misconduct here in San Francisco, and had some heartbreaking police killings to confront. And so I want to bring that experience and helping to bridge these two communities inside the club. I don't think we're going to succeed as a movement unless we're part of a greater whole. And I think it's both politically smart, but also morally imperative to take on that challenge.
Thank you. Barry?
So I mentioned that I write most every month for the Bayview newspaper. And I'm particularly troubled that because of a settlement that we signed, and the Sierra Club actually received some money for environmental work done, that we really have been silent regarding the shipyard project. And to be critical of the efforts to continue to build housing before the folks in the neighborhood actually feel it's safe. And I really want to work on helping us develop that relationship and to be able to stand with the people in the Bayview.
Thank you. Howard, please unmute yourself and you have 1 minute.
Howard Wong?
Yes,
Yes.
There's only one Howard in the meeting right now, and it's you.
Okay, thank you. As a former president of a labor union, I've worked many years on social equity, wage equity, promotional equity for women, for minorities, and many others. I've worked on legislation. I've I am president of District D Democratic Club and have a lot of interest and knowledge about politics and the inner workings of government. I've helped form public-private partnerships to build open space around Coit Tower. I've been part of many social programs in Chinatown and continue to be active in many civic organizations and political organizations.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to our chair, Kathy Howard.
I've just lost my picture. I don't know why. Hold on just a second. Okay, well, anyway, we all know what we look like, so. I want to thank everybody very much. This was very informative. And for our viewers, please be sure to go online and read the candidate statements for more information on each candidate. I'm distracted by not getting the video on here, sorry. Voting starts November 3rd. More information on voting requirements and how to vote can be found online at sierraclub.org, San Francisco Bay Chapter Elections, and I put the address in the chat. There is also information on upcoming election events online. If you have trouble finding that link, contact me at kathyhoward@earthlink.net. Thank you very much, and good night to everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Sue and Kim Shree, thank you for your work in putting this together.